Thank you, and welcome to the Patriots 300 Level Podcast. My name is Eric, and I'm joined by my co-host Kevin. Welcome back for our 20th episode this week, where we'll be breaking down this past Sunday's game versus the Dolphins, discussing news around the NFL, and previewing Saturday's upcoming playoff game versus the Buffalo Bills. As a reminder, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Pats 300 Level Pod for up-to-the-minute updates and commentary on news of the day. So, Kevin, going into this game, we knew that there wasn't really much that much benefit of an outcome other than if the Bills somehow lost to the Jets and the Patriots won, we could win the division. So they didn't have a lot riding on this game. What are your overall thoughts of what transpired on Sunday?
Yeah, I think kind of going into this, Miami just kind of remains to be kind of the house of horrors to the Patriots, where nothing goes well down there. But it's kind of more of a culmination, not even of just that, but just how they've played over the last 4 games, excluding the Jaguars game. You really needed to kind of piggyback off that Jaguars game, have a good game with the Dolphins. So that way you're kind of running feet first into the playoffs. Whereas now, by how poorly they executed, and this is kind of an overarching theme since the bye week, where just execution overall has not been well, and they've really beat themselves. It's a big part, and I don't know what's causing it. I don't know what changed in the bye week where they just stopped executing overall, and they're making mistakes that they're making at the beginning of the season, and they're putting themselves in a hole where they have to try and get out of it, and they almost can. It's just that the defense at the end can't make that final stop that needs to be made in order to get the ball back to the offense to try and win the game. And that's been just a key overarching theme for the Patriots season this year, where you look at every single loss they had pretty much. You look at the Saints, they couldn't make us, well, even looking back at the Dolphins, the first game, they had that Harris fumble, but they had the opportunity to stop them, get the ball back with a decent amount of time and try and score to get the lead. They could not make a stop. The Saints game, they were down within one score, 8 points, could not make a stop. There was the Buccaneers game where they needed to make a stop at the last drive. They couldn't make a stop, and then they had to try and go forward, and that's when they ended up missing that field goal. And just pretty much all of the games this year, Colts game,
Cowboys
game, every single loss they've had, Colts
Even
game,
the
Bills game, every single loss they've had has been a 1-score game and the defense has had the opportunity to make a stop and they can't. And that's just a big theme, and I don't think it's something that can really be changed now. I think number one, I don't think they have the talent, but if you look at old Patriots teams, this team is more talented than the 2011 defense team.
Yeah.
And they made it to the Super Bowl. So it's just that everyone's not playing, doing their own job, and sometimes they're playing a little bit more for themselves. And I think that's more of an issue with what's happening with kind of the defensive line right now, which is causing the issues. And I think we'll get into in a little bit. But my biggest thing is they're just not executing, and it's a bad kind of step to go into the playoffs. And maybe they can change it around, but they really need to kind of look deep and then try and see what's going on.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And in those games too, the frustrating part was, outside of maybe the Cowboys game, is they were getting stops in the drives leading up to that final drive. And then that final drive, you think they'll get the stop because they've done it the rest of the last however many drives, and then they just can't do it. Part of me thinks that it's been 7 times this year where they needed to get a stop and they didn't. Maybe 8 times the Texans game, they did get a stop and they won, but 7 out of 8 times they just couldn't do it. That they're due for it to finally happen. There's no proof that they can do it, but you would think if they've had it happen this many times, they're due for it to happen. And at least we're in the playoffs where maybe the luck goes their way, but it's not really optimistic since they haven't been able to do it. Other thing is, in a lot of these losses, we saw it the first 6 weeks of the season, and we thought maybe it's just extension of preseason, still early on, where we're seeing a lot of just bad penalties, unforced errors, false start penalties when you shouldn't, offsides, even just bad fumbles or bad interceptions. And then during their 7-game winning streak, we didn't see any of that. And we thought they finally figured it out. They're going to be rolling the rest of the way. And then after the bye, what we saw is those unforced errors coming back, stupid penalties, just bad mistakes that you don't really see. During the 7-game winning streak, we saw insane interceptions. And then the last few games, we saw balls that should have easily been intercepted where they just drop it. We saw it in the Bills game, we saw it by Jamie Collins, and then twice by JC Jackson. This game, we saw it by Devin McCourty and then a couple other times. I think we saw it in the Colts game too, a few interceptions that they normally typically catch and they just didn't do it. So in their losses, everything's just going not their way, but they still kept it competitive, which is kind of a miraculous thing. Of those games, they played some of their worst football and they still had a shot at the end. So it's just frustrating. I don't know if this last game, since they knew that it didn't really mean anything because the Jets probably weren't going to beat the Dolphins, or weren't probably going to beat the Bills, that regardless of what happens, it doesn't really matter. And they might have been less focused, but it looked like during the week that they were pretty focused, at least from what we heard, what we saw, or what the media saw in the limited time that they saw. So I don't really know what to make of it. Maybe it's just Miami playing in Miami, but it's now a winner take all every single week. So you can't afford those miscues going forward.
Yep. Kind of looking at the offense now. What do you really think about the running attack, the O-line, that sort of stuff?
I thought they played pretty well. I know Damian Harris and Stevenson got banged up for a little bit, so they were just relying on Brandon Bolden. But when he was in the game, he was actually pretty effective. He was fast and pretty quick and elusive that we didn't see earlier on in the season, even when he was running the ball. We've seen it from him when he's a receiver, but you haven't really seen as much as a runner, and he was pretty effective. So I thought they played pretty well. The O-line had some good aspects and bad aspects, or some good plays and bad plays. There was one where you just got completely beat when he was, I believe he was on the left side as a tight end and just let the guy go right by him for a sack. He just didn't have a good game. And I don't know if something that Mike Reese brought up that I think is a fair point is they're playing him all over the offensive line where he's just not getting enough repetition and enough consistency, where it seems like his play is slipping. And granted, the first 10 weeks of the season, he was probably your best offensive lineman, one of your most consistent players. But ever since Trent Brown came back and he had to move to tight end, he just hasn't been as effective. He's still been good as a tight end, but this game we really saw his play dip. But I thought their running attack was pretty good considering what they had, but that's definitely going to need to be a key focus again this upcoming week.
Yeah, I don't think I have much to really add on that. I think the running attack, I was actually pleasantly surprised with Bolden how he played in the running game as well. Kind of really going to the defense now, because that was, I think, the biggest issue before we get to some of the other mistakes. I think kind of the biggest key, we kind of touched upon this before, not getting the key stops, not being disciplined. And I think that really goes for up front the most. We're not really seeing a disciplined pass rush where you're containing the edge, and people are just running upfield right now. And it's kind of like everyone's playing for themselves and they're not playing as a team and they're not doing their own job. And that's the biggest thing with this defense. And we saw, again, I think I made a comment of this last week or the week before in the 2018 Super Bowl. There was a key emphasis, and they kept showing this throughout the game, about that line being a straight kind of edge. Everyone's sealing it so that way it contains everything in the middle, not people rushing up and kind of not containing the edge at all. And we're seeing that a lot now. We're seeing that with the interior. We're seeing it with the edge rushers, and especially with Judon now. I'm not even sure if it's fully injury now. Just after watching this, it just seems like a complete lack of discipline with him, where he's not containing the edge. He's rushing upfield when he shouldn't be, and that's allowed a lot of QB runs, especially at that third down run where he could have stopped them. Where we even, I think I tweeted this out from the show account. There's a clear hold on Judon, but even if he wasn't being held, what the hell is he doing rushing that far left and that far up the field? He still wasn't going to get him. So I just don't know what's going on with this team and why they've lacked this amount of discipline, where maybe it's, again, like we had said before, when you have 11 new starters all together, it's tough to get them all on the same page in year one, but we started to see them do it. So what made them revert back? Was it having that bye week where they're just not being coached hard enough right now, or maybe Bill might think they're soft, so he's not going as hard on them. But something needs to change quickly, or else they're going to be one and done.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's especially this upcoming week going up against Josh Allen, who is that dual threat. They can't afford to let him escape from the pocket and run. And especially on third downs, where we saw that the last time they played, where he killed them on those, where they were just rushing too up the field, and he just slipped through and got a first down. They can't afford to break containment. We saw that on one of the third down ones earlier, or in the fourth quarter. Not the last drive, but one of the few drives where they got a field goal, where Van Noy is actually pretty good at holding contained, not rushing too far. But on third down, it looked like he was trying to go for the sack, and he broke contained trying to go after him. And then Tua just moved past him and got the first down. So they have to do a better job at that. And it's just not good, where we've seen that a couple weeks in a row against mobile quarterbacks. The Bills a few weeks ago, now Dolphins this week, where they just didn't do it. Hopefully that's an extra emphasis this week, considering it's twice in a row, and they fix it. But I don't know. Time will tell.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm hoping that they'll change, but the last 4 weeks, it hasn't looked good.
Yeah.
Kind of shifting gears now, looking at Mack's play. Again, I think it's been this way the last, excluding Jacksonville. Kind of the tale of kind of two Macks, where he'll look really good at times, and other times he'll not so good. So if you look at the game, he had the pick six, he had the fumble, which I'll put maybe 50% on him, 50% on Karras. It might be more Karras, might be more him.
Yeah, my initial thought on that is it's more Karras, where one of the only times where he's getting the snap from Karras happens to be a fumble. I happen to think that's more on Karras, who's just not used to it, instead of Mack, who's been getting snaps all game. That's my initial thought. I know Mack blamed it on himself after the game, but Mack always puts all the blame on himself. He'll never throw a teammate under the bus. So I don't really know, but my initial thought was that was more on Karras.
Yeah. And then he had the 4th and 1 false start. And then there's another play as well. I can't think of the top of my head. I just forgot it. But he there's some poor execution from him as well. And then sometimes he looked really good. He had some really good throws to Myers and then to Henry down the field, which was really accurate. There was some deep balls, but it just wasn't good enough. Where at this time of year, and especially going to the playoffs, and it's not a fault of his own. He's a rookie quarterback. He's not going to be perfect, and it's going to take time for him to get better. And you have to think he really had no break this whole offseason before the season started, where you're playing for Alabama, you're playing in the national championship game, then you're prepping for the draft, and then you're doing all your pre-draft stuff, and then your draft, then you have rookie mini camp, and then you've got regular mini camp, and then you've got OTAs, and then you have training camp, and you're in a quarterback battle, so you're throwing a lot of throws. He played the majority of the preseason making a lot of throws, and then this whole season, this is more football than he's played his whole career. So not to say it's a rookie wall or anything, but you could see that maybe that's kind of taking a toll on him. That's why maybe he hasn't been as perfect as he was before. And this is a pretty big stat to look at. The last 3 losses they've had against Colts, Bills, and now the Dolphins. He's been 60 of 107 for a 56% completion percentage, thrown 705 yards, 3 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 1 fumble, and a passer rating of 66, which isn't good enough. And you really need your quarterback at this time of year, and especially in the playoffs, you need them to be able to steal your win or play really well and lead you to a victory. So even the Patriots in 2018, where they're that big running attack, they needed Brady to kind of outduel Mahomes in that playoff game. It wasn't just a running attack. So you're going to need Mack to steal one. And not to say he can't, but it's just he needs to kind of tighten up a bit.
No, I think that's fair. I think Mack actually had a pretty good game minus those couple mistakes, but those were killers where they put him in a hole pretty early. The pick six, I think he just didn't see the coverage. I think it was a really good play design by the Dolphins. I thought the Xavier Howard made a really good play on it, and he just didn't read the defense correctly. I think part of that's just being a rookie where he's just not used to seeing that. I think as time goes on, he'll be more used to that, more accustomed to it, and won't make that same mistake. But the thing with Mack that has impressed me this year is whenever he makes these mistakes, he always comes right back and doesn't let it affect him. All these games where they get down big, and it's not great that they get down big, but the Bills, the Colts, this game, trying to think some others, the Texans game, even the Chargers game, where they got down and they had a shot at the end to win. The Chargers ended up winning, but all those games, they were down 2-3 touchdowns. And what do you know? In the fourth quarter, they legitimately have a shot to win because Mack is playing good football. So I know the Bills game wasn't great. He was pressured a lot, but Colts game, he had a horrendous first 2.5 quarters, and he was tremendous in the fourth quarter. So I still have faith that I don't think it's a rookie wall he's hit. I feel like if it is all that fatigue, you wouldn't be seeing these good performances as the game goes on. I think there might be a little to it where there might be a little mental fatigue where he just might be drop his guard a little bit, which causes him to make that little mistake. Also, having more film on him allows defensive coordinators to pick up small things as well. But I still have faith that in big games, he's not going to crumble because we haven't really seen it so far. We've seen him crumble in a couple spots here and there, but next thing you know, he comes back and leads them down the field for a touchdown.
Yeah, I think that kind of sums up what I was saying as well. I don't have really much to add on that. Did you want to hit on the comeback attempt, or you basically kind of hit that right there?
Pretty much that at least with this team, I know that they've had some down performances. They're not playing on all cylinders where they're making uncharacteristic mistakes, turnovers, and everything, and they get down big. But we've at least seen a fight from them every single week. Even they haven't won most of those games, but they at least fought back to have a shot to win. And at least from a coach, from a fan, that's all you can ask. If you get down by 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, are they really going to have a shot to win? We saw the Bills get down early against the Colts, and they just tanked it the rest of the way. Colts won 40-something to 3 or 40-something to 9 or 10, where they didn't have a realistic shot. The Colts got up big against the Patriots, and they came back and had a shot to win. So they at least have that fight where if they get down early, it's not good because whenever if the Patriots score in the first quarter this year, they're 8-1.
7-2, I think. Or if they score first, they're 7-2.
Yeah, I had it right here. When Patriots score in first quarter, they're 8-1. When they don't score in the first quarter, they're 2-6. And then when the Patriots win the turnover battle, they're 8-0. When they lose the turnover battle, they're 1-6. So I think those two stats are really staggering, where it shows if you hold on to the football, you're going to have a really good shot at winning. If you don't get in a big hole, you're going to have a good shot at winning. And you don't have to put in all that energy to fight back and have to rely on your defense to make a stop where you haven't been able to see that this year. So, and they have fight, which is good. Just hope that they don't get into those holes. They have to start quick and just keep their foot on the gas all 60 minutes.
Yep. Couldn't say it better myself. Going on to 3 up, 3 down. I think we kind of put in our 3 up beforehand. We have a pretty similar one. So if you want to if we could just alternate 3 up, just describe why we picked who we did.
My first one, which I think was your first one as well, was Brandon Bolden. He had a really good game when Stevenson and Harris went down. They had to rely on Bolden as being the main running back. And we've seen at times where he looked slow as a running back. He had some bursts. He had that really good 20-yard rushing touchdown. And he was effective as a running back. He wasn't as good as Harris and Stevenson, but he held his own. And then him being that dual threat out of the backfield as a receiving running back has just been tremendous for him, for the Patriots this year. All scrimmage yards, he has over 600 yards this year. So he's been really effective for them, and he was probably one of, if not their best players. He's also had some good blitz pickups too.
Yep. I think he was really effective, really quick. Had those, I think, 2 touchdowns. I think he played really well in this game. It was probably his best game this year. Next person I had Hunter Henry. I think he played really well, except in the kind of the run blocking game, and he was blocking a lot more this game. I don't know if they're trying to use him more in that, and they're giving up on Smith, or if maybe Smith is hurt.
My thought is they might try and be a little less one-dimensional, because usually whenever you see Hunter in the game, you figure they're going to be passing. If you see Smith in the game, they're going to be running.
Yeah.
So by doing that, you're kind of catching the defense off guard. So
Yeah.
that's my initial thought, but it could be that they don't really, Smith might be hurt or they want to get Hunter on the field more.
Yeah. But Hunter's become probably behind Myers the second favorite target of Mack, and he's has some really good chemistry with him, and had some really good catches. I think he had a really good game in the passing game. I always think it's weird how he doesn't translate into a blocker based on his size, because he looks the part, and he looks like he'd actually be a better blocker than Smith, but I don't know, something just doesn't translate with him.
No, I agree. I thought he had a really good game. He was my number 2 too. My number 3 was Myers. Just he's been their most dependable wide receiver. If Mack needs to get a first down on third down or fourth down, he's looking Myers' way and Myers will catch it. He isn't the fastest, he isn't the most elusive, but he's dependable. He had some really good catches, some really good athletic catches. And just, I think another 4 catches, 70 yards. Just whenever you need the ball, Mack to get a first down, he's just always looking his way.
Yep. Yeah, I had him as well. I think he had a really good game. Dependable catches. I think we saw this again with Mack, where I think it kind of faults Mack to a little bit, where I think he has a little bit too much faith in him and he kind of gets locked in on him, where maybe he should be spreading it to someone else. But we also saw that with Brady. We say with any quarterback, you have your favorite receiver. You're going to probably try and get the ball to them a little bit more often because you trust them the most. But it looks like sometimes he's trying to force a little bit to him where there may be a better option.
And we saw that on that interception too, the pick 6, where I think he just didn't read the defense right, because they made a really good play on it. It was a really good play design, but I think he was also forcing the ball to Myers too.
Yeah. And then he had Aguilar up the seam and he would have been free. So just a miss there. 3 down. I got first, we both have the kind of the same one, Matthew Judon. Like I had said before, I don't really have much to add on unless you do, but just the lack of containment that he's had on the edge. He's getting pushed around too in the running game. He just has you're paying him an insane amount of money to be your best defensive player, and he has not been the last 4 or 5 weeks. He just was not good in this game. He had another bad game.
I rewatching the game, the passing, like the breaking containment is something that you can easily see, but just rewatching it, he was just getting pushed around in the running game. It looked like he didn't even know what he was doing. There were times where he was even just rushing up and just running by the running back where he could have easily tackled him. He was getting pushed around by the offensive line. We saw that last week or 2 weeks ago as well. I don't know what it is with him. I don't know if it's mentally he's just overthinking everything, or since he had such a high sack number the first 12 weeks. Sometimes in baseball, you see that with home run hitters where they go on a tear and then they're just they're swinging for the fences instead of swinging for contact, and then they start striking out or getting in bad slumps. I wonder if it's something similar like that, where he had high sack numbers the first 10, 11, 12 games, and then he wasn't getting it. Now he's just overthinking trying to get to the run at the quarterback. I wonder if that has something to do with it too. I don't know what it is, but he was in the running for defensive player of the year first 10 weeks of the season, and he just hasn't been good lately, and it's concerning because you need him to be good, especially if you're going to be without Jalen Mills and possibly without Sean Wade, which isn't as big of a deal, but he is a depth cornerback. If you're going to be without one of your starting cornerbacks and Judon isn't making plays on the field, rushing after the quarterback, you're going to be in trouble, especially with a quarterback who has shown that he can eat up this defense. He's shown that on occasion this year where he had one of his best games. He showed that last year on Monday Night Football too. So you need him. He is one of your most important players to rush the quarterback and make an impact on this game.
Yep. I don't really have much to add on that. I think he's got to play a lot better. My next one, Mac Jones. Like I said, he didn't have a completely bad game. I just think that when you're the quarterback, you need to be sharp when it comes to this time of year. And I think just there's times where he's not. And again, he's a rookie, so we shouldn't be expecting everything out of him. But to judge him on the same page as a regular seasoned player, that's how I'm doing it here. I just think that he needs to be better. Not that I don't think he's going to be good in the future, but I think that just those mistakes are what really put them in a hole to begin with.
I disagree with you on putting him in your bottom three. I understand why you did. I know he had some big mistakes that really cost them, but I thought he had a pretty good game outside of those 1-2 plays, which in the playoffs, those 1-2 plays can be the deciding factor. We saw that Miami week 1, where there were other factors why they lost week 1, but that Damian Harris fumble inside the 1 yard line is just, or inside the
5 or 10 yard line,
5 yard line. It was another game, I think the Cowboys, or one other game where he fumbled inside the 1-2. But just, we see one or two plays having a big difference. But I thought, besides the fact him coming back, him being down 3 scores in the fourth quarter and having them have a shot to potentially win the game, I thought he did play really well. So I don't agree with putting him in bottom 3. My second down was a Wenyu, where he just had a bad game. He just wasn't effective as jumbo tight end. He wasn't really great at guard, and it's a little concerning where Isaiah, when your left tackle goes down, Wenyu has been one of your most dependable, or one of the most dependable offensive linemen in the NFL the last 2 years, and they're going with Justin Herron over him at left tackle instead of Wenyu. We'll have to see this week. Isaiah Wynn was back at practice this week, I believe. I don't know if he practiced today.
No, he did not.
He was projected to be limited yesterday. He didn't practice today, but if he does come back, it's not as concerning. But if he doesn't, depends. Do you put Trent Brown at left tackle? Do you put Wenyu at left tackle? Do you put Justin Ron at left tackle? And what do you do? You need to keep Mack not being pressured. We saw him get pressured during the Bills game a couple weeks ago, and he just had one of his worst games of the year. So it is concerning that he didn't have a great game. Hopefully it was just that one day, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, I think if Wynn is out, I still think it's unlikely that Owenu will play left tackle or Brown, just because they've never practiced it this year. And that's been a big thing with them, where you'll probably just see Haran slip in the left tackle spot because it's something that he's practiced and played, where neither Owenu or Brown have played an ounce of left tackle at all. So,
but Brown has in the system back in 2018, and then he did in OTAs too. So he has some experience, but he has been good at right tackle too.
So, my next down was special teams in general. This is just another game where it's just, I don't know. Jake Bailey has had touchbacks and poor situations. There is the Bolden, even though he didn't make contact with him, there was a poorly called penalty, but there was
bad form.
So what are you doing trying to make a tackle like that? Where all you had to do is he was short of the line anyway. So you could have stopped him. So like, what are you doing in that instance? And then there was the Lawrence guy lining over the center, where that's a basic special teams play.
That's something you learned back in Pop Warner, where you never line up over the long snapper.
Yeah.
And so I understand if maybe he just was setting up quickly and just didn't have time, where it was being rushed. He got down and just didn't have time to move over, but he was just lined up completely up against the long snapper, which is just something you can't do. And it's just, I don't get it. That's one of the worst penalties I've seen from this team all year, just because of A, it is one of your most dependable veteran players who has played on special teams, and B, it's just one of those things that you learn early on and just not to do.
Yeah, it's just that the special teams in general this whole year, and especially for the amount of money they're paying in special teams, like specific only players, and the amount of roster spots they're taking up for us has not been well. And I just hope that Bailey's hurt, because not to hope injury on anyone, but by how poorly he's played this year, it's just that if he's not hurt, he's definitely probably going to be going next year.
Yeah, Matt Araiza,
if he is hurt, there may be a competition. So
yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, special teams was my third down as well, just with how poor it's been. I think the only game where I think, outside of Nick Folk, I think the only game where it was a high point was the Chargers game. And that's considering how bad their special teams is.
Yep. Yeah, I think we probably hit on that. So next are questions that we go through each week. First one, I'll say it and then let you talk about it because I missed this and I don't have one ready, so I'll get a minute to think about it. So Pat's regular season awards, MVP for the Patriots this year.
Big kick, Nick.
That's kind of sad.
Well, last year I thought their MVP was Jake Bailey, and then
Yeah.
their runner-up was Nick Folk. But the reason why I say Nick Folk is he is just so dependable. And
Mhm.
granted, lately they've been kicking. I mean, they've been scoring a lot more touchdowns
Mhm.
than field goals. But early on in the season, some of those wins that they needed, it came down to they weren't able to get into the end zone. But every single time Nick Folk gets on the field, you trust that he's going to make it. It's pretty much once he gets up there, you can just go to the bathroom if you have to, because you
Mhm.
know it's automatic three. He's just dependable, and points is everything, especially when we get into the playoffs. One extra field goal, made field goal, might be the difference. We even saw it in the Bills game where the Bills missed a field goal and Patriots made one. That could have been the difference in the game,
Mhm.
the first game. But
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Mine one is going to be kind of a twofer. It's going to be the Harris Stevenson combination at running back. I think
yeah,
the running attack has been the big kind of definition of this team. And I think they've done the most to help them be in the situation to win, especially if you're up from ahead.
yeah. No, I actually have them as my offensive player of the year. That Harris Stevenson combination. If you have to go with one, I have to go with Harris because he's been the more dependable, more used running back. Almost 1,000 yards, 15 rushing touchdowns. But him and Stevenson, that 1-2 combo, both combined for 2,100 yards and 20 touchdowns, I believe,
Mhm.
is just what's been leading this team. And with both of them in there, you know that even if one has an off day, the other one's going to pick up the slack.
Yep. So I'm going to have them again as my offensive players of the year. If they're MVP, you would think they would be too. So,
Yeah,
going on to defensive player of the year, who would you have?
this is a tough one. I'm going to do a twofer on this, or two different or caveats. I think defensive player of the year is JC Jackson because of how well he's performed, especially the last 10, 11 weeks,
Mhm.
where he's he should get some votes for defensive player of the year. He probably won't, but he's just been a lockdown corner ever since after the Cowboys game,
Mhm.
where he's just getting picks, he's breaking up passes, not allowing completions. But my defensive MVP would go to Adrian Phillips. I know it's only defensive player of the year, but I think Adrian Phillips does everything on this defense where he's the most important player because he covers the tight ends, he covers the running backs, he can line up at linebacker, he can line up as slot corner. Whatever Bill asks him to do, he does and excels at it.
Mhm.
So that's my answer to that question. What about you?
That's a good one. I'm going to go JC Jackson just by how dominant he is. And they really need to make sure that they bring him back, at least on the franchise tag, and before they can develop someone else, because they really don't have anything else in the pipeline.
Yep.
Most improved, who do you have?
I sort of have a twofer. One is being Adrian Phillips because of how he was good last year, but he wasn't
Mhm.
this good. So he's just taking that next step. But I
Mhm.
think my ultimate one is Kyle Duggar, especially in the pass coverage, where last year he was great in the run, but he wasn't really a good pass defender. And then this year, first couple of weeks, he wasn't great, but he's really stepped up where he's even better at the run, but he's really excelled at pass coverage too. And he has been one of their most important defensive players. Not as high I'd say as Adrian Phillips or Jackson, but he is one of those key cornerstones. And I think he's going to be big this upcoming Saturday.
Yep. I have the same person. So Kyle Duggar would be my most improved. Biggest disappointment.
This
A
is
lot.
tough. I have to go with Jonnu just because I had such high expectations for him.
Mhm.
I expected him to really be that Aaron Hernandez type tight end where he's so athletic, but he also has sort of in the end zone, he can be like Gronk too, where
Mhm.
he's fast, he's elusive, he can take some handoffs, he can catch over the middle, you can line him up at halfback. But in the end zone, he's also big and can jump high where he can get some of those Gronk balls. And he just this year hasn't taken that what I thought he was going to be. I don't think that he's going to be a disappointment his whole career. I think it's just such a huge step from Tennessee's offense to the Patriots offense, where I think he needs another off season to learn the playbook, learn everything. And I think that Saints game really messed him up too mentally, where he's overthinking everything. But if he played to what I think he could play, I think the Patriots would probably be the 1 seed and one of the biggest threats in the AFC and possibly the NFL this year. And
I think
I know that's kind of that's high praise, but if he played to that level, I think it would be a tough offense to stop.
Yeah, I think he is a really good one to choose. So because you chose someone, I'm just gonna choose someone different just to talk about. I'm gonna go with Devon Godchow. I think the amount of money you're paying him, the fact that he ended up being demoted from defensive tackle because he's just undersized for that position. And just how kind of poorly he played. And I think they really may need to decide if they're going to move on from next year. Is it something that's just going to be completely undersized the whole time and not be able to play a position, or something that he can kind of grow into, like what was his name, Danny Shelton.
Yeah.
But Danny Shelton was a much bigger player, so it's more of a technique for Shelton, whereas Godchow may just be he gets pushed around. So I think that was a pretty big disappointing spot because the run defense was supposed to be revamped. It was supposed to be a lot better with him, with Guy, with Barmore, with all these other players, and just hasn't looked
We've seen some games, but where it looked like they turned the corner, but then lately they've reverted back to what they were early on in the season.
Yep, exactly, 100%.
So what's your prediction for how far the Patriots will advance this year in the playoffs?
This is really tough because this year is so strange with in the NFL completely, not just the AFC, but everyone, where any team could beat anyone any week. And usually that was the case really all the time in the NFL, but this year it seems more like that. I'm still thinking probably one win, and then lose in the divisional. But I could see them winning even more than that because looking through this, if they beat the Bills, they're facing Tennessee. Is Derrick Henry going to be healthy? That's the big question. He's going to play, but how healthy is he going to be? And that's really the key aspect. Because I don't think Tannehill's beating you, but is Derrick Henry going to beat you? Especially by how much running they're allowing lately. It's going to probably be a lower scoring game, so it may be in their favor where you're both running a lot. So that's really a toss up there. I don't think anyone's going to dominate the other one. And if they win that, playing with house money, who knows? But I'm going to say if I had to bet anything, I'd probably bet. Actually, if I had to bet anything, I'd probably bet they would lose the Bills game. I don't think they will, but judging by how they played the last 4 weeks, they haven't played well. So my gut says, though, they'll probably beat the Bills and then lose in the divisional.
I think that's fair. My prediction is they make it to the AFC Championship game. I know the way that they played the last 4 weeks isn't really indicative of that, but I think based on how cocky the Bills were after that last game, how the Patriots played their worst game of the year, the Bills played their best, and the Pats still had a shot at the end to win. I think based on how pretty much all their losses are just unforced errors and just stupid mistakes, I think that knowing it's the playoffs, they correct that. And I think they're going to win this week. I have not been a big fan, or I have not bought into the Titans. I wasn't bought into them in 2019 when they beat the Patriots and made it to the AFC Championship game. I wasn't bought into them last year. I'm still not bought into them. I don't think they can win with Ryan Tannehill. I don't think Derrick Henry, based on his injury, the type of injury it is going to be able to be productive. I think he might be like 80% of himself, which is still a top 10 running back. But for the Titans to win with but like an average, above average defense and a below average quarterback, you need Derrick Henry to be Derrick Henry. And I don't think he's going to be that. So I think the Patriots will be able to move past the Titans. I think they'll lose the next round if they face the Chiefs, but they do historically match up well against the Chiefs. Bill knows how to shut them down. So I wouldn't be shocked if they were able to make it to the Super Bowl. And then in the Super Bowl, one game, anything can happen. We've seen that 2001 when the Patriots beat the Rams. We saw it in 2007 when the Giants beat the Patriots. We saw it in 2018 when Patriots were low going into the playoffs, and they beat the Rams, one of the high scoring offenses. So you never really know when you get to that one game. So I think if I had to put money on it, I'd honestly putting money that they make it to the AFC Championship game. But I also wouldn't be shocked if they lose to the Bills, where they just been so inconsistent this year. If they have another game where they have these stupid turnovers, they're not going to be able to win. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, it's complete. I wouldn't be shocked with anything happens.
Yeah,
really. Super Bowl prediction. You want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
I'll go first. This is a tough one, but I think it's a rematch of last year, Bucks versus Chiefs, and I think Brady pulls out his eighth Super Bowl. I think the way that Aaron Rodgers is so stat heavy and trying to show like how great he is, I think he's going to be shown up again by Brady this year. Rams are too inconsistent. I don't believe in the Cowboys. Cardinals have a shit coach. Jimmy G is going to get hurt, and then the Eagles aren't going to win. So I think it's just going to be Packers, Bucks, and I think Brady once again goes to Lambeau, beats Aaron Rodgers if Aaron Rodgers doesn't lose the first round, and then makes it to the Super Bowl. I think the Chiefs, I know they have holes, but I think just Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, I think they're going to find a way to get there. I wouldn't be shocked if they don't. I wouldn't be shocked if they lose for not first round, because they're going to kill the Steelers, but if they lose to Bengals or even the Patriots or another team. But that's my prediction.
I think because you pick that one, and I'm teetering between who's going to win the NFC Championship game. I'm going to go with my other one. It's going to be the Chiefs versus. Can you guess?
You're going to say 49ers and Jimmy G.
49ers and Jimmy G. One kind of stat, I was going to bring this up a little later on, but Jimmy G is 45-18 his career record as a starter.
He's only started 47 games.
I don't think that's true.
I'm on Football Reference right now. He's played 63 games. He started 47.
Well, he's 45-18. He has a winning percentage of 714. The only quarterback that's higher than him, actually, there's two quarterbacks higher than him. I can't remember the first one because
Otto Graham.
Other than Otto Graham is Tom Brady. He's gonna beat Tom Brady in the NFC Championship game. He's gonna lose in the Super Bowl again because his coach is gonna choke because he's not a winner. And Jimmy G is going to ride off in the sunset the following year and win the Super Bowl with Sean Payton.
I think that's a bold prediction. Just one thing to say is the winning percentage you have of him at 73%. Is that correct? 714. His winning percentage, or his start percentage of starts games where he was supposed to be the starter and didn't start, is 57%. So according to your statistics, which are kind of skewed because some of them are games he went in when Brady was quarterback, those are 11 of the games when he was with actually more than that. 11. 15 of the games were when Brady was quarterback with the Patriots. But anyway, besides the point, he is so hurt, and I don't think he's going to last it through the playoffs. I think he's going to get hurt, banged up, the thumb or something else is going to pop up, and then Trey Lance is going to get killed. But we'll have to see. I'm just not a big Jimmy G guy.
I agree that Jimmy is not tough.
Yeah.
So if he has an injury, this is barring no injury. If Jimmy has an injury, there's no shot of him playing. But if Jimmy is healthy, well, not any worse than he is now, because I know he has that thumb injury. If Jimmy's not any worse than he is now, Jimmy's consistently shown he's a winning quarterback. It's just he's not tough. So I think a dome would really help him well.
That's right.
So I think that's why Saints would be a good place for him next year.
Yeah. So I just looked based on Football Reference. They say that he started 47 games and he's 33-14 in the regular season, which still puts him at a winning percentage of 70%, which is still insane, but
still higher than Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
And most quarterbacks.
I think small sample size, but what?
Most quarterbacks are 600 or lower.
Yeah.
All right. The next question kind of brings where I get that Jimmy stat. Where does Mack rank among the playoff quarterbacks? So
that's a tough one. I have him number 10 of quarterbacks with him ahead of Jimmy G, Tannehill, Hurts, and Roethlisberger. With the caveat, in a playoff game, I would rather have Mack than Matthew Stafford. I think Stafford's a better quarterback at this time, but I think he's just a loser. After the game where the Rams were up 17-0 against the 49ers in the first half last week, and then the Rams ended up losing that game, losing the 2 seed, and they dropped down to the 4 seed. After the game, he said that it was a tough environment to play. It was a home game. He throws pick sixes all the time. It's just, I think in big situations, he just crumbles. I thought before it was just the line because he was with the Lions, but the more I see it, the more it's just, I think that's who he is. So I think overall, I put Mack as the number 10 quarterback of the 14 quarterbacks. I put him ahead of Jimmy, but I would take him over Stafford. So I put him as the 9th quarterback I'd want. I'd put first, I have Brady, Mahomes, Rodgers, Burrow, Kyler Murray, Dak, Josh Allen, and Derek
Carr. I'm somewhat close. I have Mack at number 11. I'd have 3 quarterbacks ahead of him. I'd have him ahead of 3 quarterbacks. Tannehill, Roethlisberger, and Hurts. The Roethlisberger one was tough just because of his experience, but I just don't think he's good anymore.
Yeah.
So that was just the one tough thing where he's had a lot of experience. Mack has none. But yeah, I'd put him there. The one I was going between back and forth was Derek Carr, just because I think he's kind of a loser too. He has played really well this season, and he did go kind of toe to toe last game in the Chargers, and that was a pretty interesting game. And I think we'll touch on that a little bit later on. But I've got Brady, Mahomes, Rodgers, Burrow, Allen, Jimmy G, Dak, Murray, Stafford, Carr, then Mack, then Tannehill, Roethlisberger, and Hurts.
I think that's fair. We'll have to see. But
all right, news around the NFL. Like I had said, Chargers Raiders game, probably one of the best games of the year, if not the best game of the year. And I remember with I think 4 minutes left, I was like, well, we got to check on the weather for the Bills because we know we're going against them. And I saw there was a few different Pat's beat writers that actually already bought their tickets to Buffalo for their plane tickets, and they ended up having the clown emoji of themselves when they see it tied up. But in the end, the Raiders ended up winning. I think the biggest just kind of thing out of this game was, one, what the hell is Staley doing all the time? It's just he I think way overthinks everything. There is that egregious going for in the fourth, I think, was it your 17 or your 21-yard line, whatever it was,
18-yard line, somewhere around that.
Like, what the hell are you doing? Like, that should have lost them the game alone. And then there was the timeout where they still ended up running the next play, but they put themselves in a worse position where, first of all, the Raiders were perfectly content with having a nice run and running it out. And they ended up not only calling the timeout where it kind of resets the Raiders too, but they put in a defensive back and took out the linebacker, where everyone knows they're running the ball. What the hell are you doing? It's just one thing where we'll talk about. I'll talk about it when we get to the third thing.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to say the same thing as me. But yeah, I don't know what Staley's doing.
And the thing is, it's not just this one game. He's been doing this all year.
Mm-hmm.
I know the media fell in love with him because he had a couple press conferences where he said some like interesting stats or how he views the game, and everyone was enamored with him. But in big games, he pulls this all the time. We saw this against the Chargers not the Chargers. They are the Chargers against the Chiefs a couple weeks ago, where they should have won that game. But he just miscue after miscue after miscue. He's just either overthinking it or just an absolute idiot.
Yeah.
And I don't know what. There's no way the Chargers, as talented as they are, should have missed the playoffs. And I blame a lot of that on their coach.
Yeah. Next one, Colts. They ended up losing to the Jaguars, who are 2-14. It's just another thing where I think the Colts, I don't know if they're regarding it yet or they may be soon, but the Wentz trade, I never knew he was this bad.
Yeah, I didn't
Based
either.
on a few years ago, I always thought he was a decent quarterback, but this year he has not looked good.
Yeah. Like the first half of the year, he looked decent, but then the second half, he's just looked atrocious.
Yeah, it's looking like the Eagles got a really good trade out of that. They get a first round and I think a third round.
Yep, first round, third round, and then
And
30
then
million in cap space for next
yep.
year.
So it's a win-win for them. They go in the playoffs this year. The Colts are out.
Yep.
I think that's just the big thing where I think Wentz is a loser.
Yep. No, I agree. And I couldn't watch the entire game because I was at the airport and on a plane. But from what the parts that I could see, it's just like, it looked like the Colts just gave up. And then the Jaguars, which were fighting for the 1 seed, where they shouldn't have tried to win the game. I believe they ended up getting the number 1 pick anyway. Not the 1 seed.
The Lions won too.
But they had nothing to play for, and you're going into a game against a team with only 2 wins. You win the game, you're in the playoffs. And just put that performance, it's just atrocious. I was wondering after that if they were going to fire Frank Wright, because going into the last 2 weeks, all they had to do is either beat the Raiders, who I still don't think the Raiders are a great team, but they played well, or beat the Jaguars. And to lose both of those games after big wins against the Patriots and the Cardinals. After the Patriots game, I thought that the Colts were going to lose to the Cardinals because they pretty much played like the Super Bowl. The Patriots like it was their Super Bowl. I guess I was just a week off where the last 2 games they just completely fell off because they put so much time and energy into the Patriots and Cardinals, and they kind of overlooked the Raiders and the Jaguars. So I think after that performance, Frank Wright should have been fired, but I don't know. We'll have to see next year. It's going to be tough for him to win with Carson Wentz as his quarterback. And if you don't want him as your quarterback, you're committing so much 30 million cap space at him. No one's going to want him this year or next year after how bad he was this year. So
yeah, it's a pretty tough thing for him. Last thing, actually kind of 2 things, because there was a new break of yesterday or today, I think. Maybe it was yesterday. So first one, Joe Judge was fired, which was kind of a weird timing of it, where you would think, if you know you're going to fire him, why didn't you do it on Monday? Well, why'd you wait and think about it a little bit even more? Everything I think we've read and seen so far, it looks like it's just the culmination of the last 4 weeks of his kind of behavior and commentary, and just how the team has performed with no kind of passion for him. I didn't get them keeping him at first, and it makes total sense why you're going, because number one, if you're looking for a GM, you're really holding back some of the good GM spots, because if you're a GM, you're gonna want to pick your own coach. So you'd be more enticing to go to the Vikings or the Bears job, because they're looking for a GM and a coach. No one wants to be stuck with a coach that they don't want. So that's one thing. Number two, it's just he's so ridiculous with everything he said the last few weeks. Where how can you have any respect for the man? Would I take him back as a special teams coordinator? Yes, but how poor they're playing. But as a head coach, I would not want this man.
Yeah, the thing with Judge is I think they weren't going to fire him even after everything the last 4 weeks. I think that's why they didn't fire him on Black Monday. But I think just seeing the reaction from all the fans, from all the media in New York, I think they kind of rethought everything, and that's when they decided to fire him. I think he was put in a tough situation because he didn't have a great roster. He had a pretty horrendous roster. And then the last 6 weeks of the season, he was playing with Jake Fromm and Mike Lennon as his quarterbacks, where he did pathetically call a QB sneak on 2nd and 9 and 3rd and 9 from his own 5-yard line just to prevent getting a safety, which I think is kind of gutless. But I think he was put in a bad situation because you can't trust Jake Fromm or Mike Lennon to get them past that. I don't know. I think everything he said kind of shows he's not a great coach, but he also didn't really have a great opportunity either, which probably shows why he was the only one that took the Giants job as well. But initially,
yeah, that's true. I think the biggest surprise, because that wasn't really a surprise, but the biggest surprise was Brian Flores being fired. And I just think I don't know what the Dolphins are doing. I get that, and we talked about, I think, at the beginning of the year and maybe towards the middle of the year when how poorly they're playing, where he may be
Yeah.
fired, especially because there've been reports over the offseason, and we've seen it just with the coaches where he hasn't kept a consistent offensive coordinator. Doesn't seem like he's very flaky with his coaches. Um, and there were reports that players that have left there were saying how they weren't happy playing there. It was something that they weren't really too happy with. So, but the fact that even with that stuff happening, he's been the best coach they've had in 20 years or more.
I'd say dating back at least to Nick Saban.
Nick
He
Saban
he
just
did
had the
pretty
wrong
well,
quarterback.
and then he's the one that wanted Drew Brees and they didn't, so that's why he went to Bama.
Mm-hmm. So I think having Flores where he's had a winning record the 2 out of 3 seasons and has put them in a good position where they're tough and they're just a quarterback, pretty much a quarterback and maybe an offensive lineman away from really doing something. And the fact that you're playing the Patriots tough all the time and you're going to be facing 2 games a year. I just don't know what they're doing. Well, I don't know whether siding with the GM that's been there for 20 years and has been a loser his whole time. And I get the GMs
his dad was the crap GM for the Patriots too in the 90s.
Yeah. And then I get GMs are closer to ownership than coaches. And this is probably something where Flores isn't a great people person because it kind of tells us it is. And maybe that's what kind of made him choose the GM over him. But if you're having a power struggle, I would have rather, if I were the Dolphins, I would keep Flores and find a GM that could work with him rather than find a coach that could work with the GM.
Yeah, I saw a report that came out either yesterday or today that part of the friction with Flores and the owner was that back in 2019, where Flores went 5-11 with one of the worst rosters in NFL history, which was incredible. And then they're the reason why the Patriots didn't get a bye because they beat the Patriots the last week of the season, getting the Chiefs to get the bye. That's the season the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, where if the Patriots had the bye, they wouldn't have had to face Titans first round. They might have ended up making it to the Super Bowl and win. Then who knows if Tom Brady ever leaves the Patriots after winning a 4th Super Bowl in 6 years, but that's going on a different tangent. But anyway, the reports were that the owner wanted the Dolphins to tank. And they started the year, I believe, like 1-10, and then they won 4 of their last 5 games. And that's where the friction started because the owner wanted the team to tank. Brian Flores wanted to coach to win, even with a bad roster. And by not tanking, that had them fall down to I believe either the number 5 pick or 6 pick. And instead of getting Joe Burrow as their quarterback, they ended up getting Tua Tagovailoa. So because of that, the owner was mad that they don't have Joe Burrow, even though Brian Flores wanted Justin Herbert instead of Tua, but the Greer wanted Tua instead of Herbert, even though everyone, or at least me looking at it, didn't think Tua was going to be a good quarterback. So I think the owner's an idiot. I think that it's going to be tough for him to get a great coach because they still have Greer as the GM, and seeing how they fired Flores, who was a great coach, I think they're going to be stuck with the Bill O'Briens of the world as their coaches.
Yep. And it seems like he may be getting a job with Jacksonville, possibly.
Yeah.
So should be interesting down there. And then I think one thing you had, I think, originally mentioned, and I'll just kind of steal it right now, but a good spot for him, what should happen is looking back at the Chargers, where if you were the Chargers, would you rather have Flores or Staley? I'd rather fire Staley and have Brian Flores as my coach.
Yeah. If you could talk to Flores' agent and see if if he'd sign with the Chargers, I would fire Staley right now. And even if he's not, I'd fire Staley and get Josh McDaniels or Brian Daboll. They can't be as bad as Staley cost them 3, 4, or 5 wins. There's no way a team as talented as the Chargers should go 9-8.
Yeah, I agree completely. Now looking forward, Patriots Bills. We want to have a quick kind of preview of this game, what we're thinking is going to happen. We faced the Bills twice now. Game 1, you can kind of like throw out a little bit because we're not going to probably ever see that ever again.
You can throw out parts of it, but keep parts of it.
Yeah.
The reason why I say that is because you can't really throw Patriots throwing 3 times. You can't consider that. But the Patriots offensive line and defensive line just manhandling the Bills. was, I think, a momentum setter. And if you're going to win this game, I think they have to bully the Bills again like they did that game.
Yeah. And the game right now, I think the temperature is set to be 0 degrees
Before wind chill.
Before wind chill. But no, I don't think there's really going to be any wind that night. So no wind, no snow, no rain.
Yeah, I saw a wind of about 5 to 10 miles an hour, so it might put it at like -3 to -5 feel, but
not a
0 or
huge wind
-3
game
is
or
going to be
anything
the
like
same.
that.
Yeah.
So one thing Josh had said before, and it's pretty true, where it's wind and precipitation, so snow or rain, are bigger impacts to the passing game than just the cold itself. So it hopefully shouldn't impact Mack as much, but we've never seen him play in that conditions and what you have to wear. So I don't know if all of that kind of Under Armour stuff may just get in the way of him throwing, but we'll see. I know
just
Josh.
talking about the cold too, though, is that we've seen Josh Allen in bad weather games. Granted, a lot of cold weather games also have bad weather, but he just doesn't perform as well. Mm-hmm. There's an interesting stat where in game 75 and higher degrees, he throws on average 360 yards. Games 50 to 74, 321. Games 50 degrees or less, his average is 144 yards per game. Mm-hmm. And he even came out this week saying it sucks playing in cold weather. It's something mental that he has to get over. But by even saying that, it kind of shows that he hasn't really gotten over it yet. He does say that he gets poor circulation in his feet and hands, which is part of it. So he has to stay warm. But at that cold temperature, it's going to be interesting to see if we see the Josh Allen from a couple weeks ago where he shredded the Patriots, or if we see the Josh Allen from the week after where he was horrendous against the Falcons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it should be pretty interesting.
And that was a bad weather game.
My guess would be we're not going to be seeing Josh Allen from game 2. I think it's going to be kind of in between. I don't think.
I agree.
Game 1 was, I think he had like a 50% completion pass percentage, and that's a lot due to the wind too. I think he's going to be somewhere in between. I do think they're going to make he's going to have at least 1 or 2 bad plays, because he always does. Even last game, he had, I think, 2 plays that could have been intercepted and that could have changed the result.
There were 2 J.C. Jackson ones and then 1 Jamie Collins ones.
All right. So he's always going to give you, it's kind of like Brett Favre, where he's going to give you 2 to 3 plays. It's just, are you going to make them? So I think I would like to see that they make at least 1 or 2 of them, and then see who kind of wins the turnover battle. I think the biggest kind of thing going into this is that they have to play a lot better. They have to execute, and they have to have a better defensive game plan going against them, where you can't have this soft zone. You could have zone, but it can't be everyone just running free, where, like we had said before, the McKenzie wasn't what's his name? Miles Bryant, his fault completely. No one was attacking McKenzie at the line. No one was attacking him within that 5-yard window, shoving him, getting him off that route. So he was running free from one end to the other, and it's really tough to defend. I think their slowness on defense, but their linebackers really hurt them this game. I think what they should do is, the Bills don't have a really great running attack. I think they should kind of do the old, kind of the opposite of how they played Peyton Manning, where they used to accept all the run and let him. Actually, no, it'd be the exact same thing with Manning. Yeah. They let them run 200 yards if they want.
Yeah,
but don't let them pass. So I would carry an extra defensive back or 2 on the roster for that game. I would sub out Bentley and maybe Hightower, or maybe use Hightower on the edge. And for linebackers, I'd use Phillips and Duggar. And then I would flood the defense with probably 8 defensive backs, probably 8 defensive backs. So
no, I agree completely. I think that's what they should do, and I think that's ultimately what they will do. We saw that in the Tampa game as well, where they pretty much said, if you want to run it, go run it. And Tampa, who was horrendous running the ball, ran for over 100 yards. Yeah. But that was by design. Belichick's notorious game plan from when he was Giants defensive coordinator against the Buffalo Bills was to slow down the Bills' explosive offense in the 90s Bills, not current Bills, was I want the Bills to run for over 100 yards. He told his defense that. And they were like, what the hell are you talking about? We don't want to give up 100 yards. And what he was saying is by letting them run, A, you're slowing the game down. But B, by committing to the pass, I don't think Jim Kelly is smart enough to dissect a defense. So if he has to throw the ball, I don't know if he's going to be able to understand our coverages too, but it also slows the game and eats up clock, and it keeps the Bills pretty much, it keeps it a closer game. So I think we're going to see that. Yep. But also just brings me back a little bit to when the Dolphins played the Ravens this year, when the Dolphins, surprisingly, when they were 1-8 or 1-7, beat the Ravens, was they pretty much also blitzed with some faster linebackers or even defensive backs. And that might be a way to get Josh Allen too, where if you're just blitzing 4, you can keep a spy in the middle. So if he breaks containment, but you're also having someone fast rushing after him. We've seen that when he gets blitzed, when he's under pressure, he's not a really good quarterback. So that might be something interesting to see too, especially if you go with a smaller set, you have someone faster running after him. So even if he does break containment, they can run after him and he doesn't get a big gain.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good game plan. Anything else you want to hit on the defense before I go to the over under and the score?
Yeah, one big thing is right now Jalen Mills test positive for COVID on Tuesday. It's going to be tough for him to test out. It is possible. He has until Saturday at 4 p.m. But being without, I know Mills hasn't been he's been, some people love him, some people hate him. He is slow, but he has been a dependable starter. And without him going up against a good passing attack, it's going to be tough. We'll have to see who takes his spot if he is out. If it's going to be Juwan Williams, if it's going to be Ross, if it's going to be Bryant, Sean Wade, if he comes back to, he probably won't in time, but should be interesting to see. It's going to be definitely a big loss. And then also the Bills are going to have Cole Beasley, who they didn't have the last game when the Bills pretty much tore you to shreds. I think Bill Belichick's going to have a much better defensive game plan this week. And I think it's going to be a close game, but I think they're going to have a shot as long as they don't have those bad turnovers and stupid penalties. I think they have a good shot to win.
Yeah. Right now the Bills are favored by 4.5 points, over under 44. What do you got for a score?
I have them at Patriots 24, Bills 20, right at the over under. I could see it going a little higher, a little lower. With it being that cold, you typically see more drops from the receivers, especially when the ball is thrown hard. So I wouldn't be shocked if you actually see more drops from the Bills, just because Allen has such a big arm where he's going to be lasering in, and it's going to be tough to catch it even with gloves, keeping your hands warm. Then you also do see it's tougher for running backs or even receivers to hold on to the ball after they catch it, with it being that cold. So there might be some fumbles, turnovers as well. But I think it might be a low scoring game. I could see it going a little higher or lower, but my thought is 24-20 Pats.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I'm going to go 24-17 Patriots. I really like 24-20, but I didn't want to have the same pick as you. So I originally was going to have 27-24. But my caveat is they're 24 points. Nick Folk is going to miss a field goal for the first time.
Ooh, interesting.
I don't know how many years.
Week 1 last year.
Under 50 yards.
Yeah. I don't know. I believe he's either tied for the record or one below it. The record's 56 consecutive. I think he's going to get the record.
56 consecutive under 50 yards?
Yeah. And I think he's at either 54 or 55. He's right at that.
But we'll see what happens. It should be a good game. Saturday night, 8:30. Anything else you'd like to discuss?
No, I think that's it. We covered a lot this episode, but it's a big week last week and a really big game on Saturday night. So should be good. Pats Bills game 3.
Yeah, it should be a fun, exciting game. We look forward to discussing it, and hopefully future Patriot games for the postseason next week. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and we'll be talking to you next week. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Pat's 300 Level Pod. And again, we're on YouTube as well if you just consume us on the regular podcast. So thank you very much, and look forward to talking to you next time.